Coming up next, she's an accomplished attorney committed to serving her community. Prince George's County native Marva Jo Camp talks about leadership development and the value of community service on this edition of Conversations with Charlene Dukes.
Welcome, I'm Charlene Dukes, president of Prince George's Community College. Leadership development and community service in Prince George's County are two topics my guest knows very well. As a high-powered attorney for national clients, a pro bono counsel for local nonprofits, and a dedicated supporter and volunteer for numerous organizations, Marva Jo Camp has devoted her life and her career to leadership and giving back through community service. In addition to practicing law, she currently serves as the chair of Leadership Prince George's, the vice chair of the Prince George's County Economic Development Corporation, and a trustee for Maryland Citizens for the Arts. She has also received numerous accolades for her work and her volunteer service to Prince George's County. Thank you for being here today, Marva Jo.
Thank you. It's a pleasure and an honor to be able to sit with you, Dr. Dukes.
Well, listen, and let's be informal. We've known each other for such a long time, and I think that we certainly have mutual admiration for each other. But you've lived and worked in Maryland for most of your life. So let's start by telling viewers about who the real Marva Jo Camp is. Your background, your family, your childhood, where you grew up in Prince George's County.
Well, I am born in Washington, D.C., but have spent most of my childhood and adult life in Prince George's County. We moved from the district into Suitland, and which at the time was very rural, which nobody believes me when I tell them that now. But I grew up in Suitland, attended Silver Hill Elementary School, Longfields Elementary School, and Andrew Jackson Junior High. Back now it's middle school, but before it was junior high. And then I went to Eleanor Roosevelt High School. It was the first year that there was an Eleanor Roosevelt High School. We had never had a science and tech in Prince George's County, had never had a school that had 9th through 12th, and had never had a school that had 7 periods. So it was at the cutting edge of what was happening throughout the country. And after I graduated, we moved to Brandywine. I've lived in Clinton, so I've lived in a lot of portions of Prince George's County, and now I live in Mitchellville. And
so I laugh as you said junior high. I remember junior high school too as well. So, and I understand that you attended Prince George's Community College while you were still in high school. Talk about that.
Absolutely. I wanted to get a head start on college and had come over to Prince George's Community College, wanted to be a little grown and have some mentors of college students. I was also interested in some classes that the school didn't offer, high school didn't offer. I think I took economics and business, and you'll be pleased to know that I got A's in both of those courses. And then when I went on to college, it really did make a difference for me in terms of being comfortable with that college experience.
And I understand that you went to the University of Virginia, and we'll talk about that in a moment, but your mom was a school teacher.
Yes. My mother taught over 40 years, most of it in Prince George's County. I mentioned that I went to Longfields Elementary. She taught there for 27 years, and so she brought me there my 6th grade year. Beyond anything, my mother was just a phenomenal, she's passed away, but a phenomenal woman. And seeing her as a teacher, there were a couple things that just stand out to me. One is that she had a love of learning, and she imparted that love of learning on me, and then with my 2 daughters, that love of learning. The other is that she saw young people. And what I mean by that, back then Longfields was a very challenged school, and a lot of kids that needed a lot. And they always gave her the class of people that they thought were the worst kids. And somehow she found the best in those kids. And I can tell you so many of them went on to do phenomenal things. And they would come back and tell her, you saw us when nobody else did. And I think that just talks about the importance of looking at children, not just on the education, but seeing the total person and how they're impacted, both at home and at school. And she was just a gentle soul and a spirit and a very, very good teacher. So people loved her.
Now, did you ever have the opportunity to be in her classroom?
No, but what I did do my senior year in high school, I was a teacher. I was her aide, so I would go to school and then I would come over to Longfields and I would be her aide. So while she was doing class, we would take some of those kids who were especially challenged, and I would take them to the side and do things with them. The other thing that I saw, and again, because she looked past just what education and understood you can't educate young people if you don't understand their whole circumstance. But I'll give this as one example. There was a little girl who was just evil, and we could not figure out why. And nobody wanted her in the classroom. My mother said, I want her. What it turns out is that when she would come to school, they didn't do her hair, and the kids would tease her. And so she was angry, and nobody took the time to find out why she was angry. So I would go before class, before school, and come and do her hair before she got into the classroom. Her hair looked good, they stopped teasing her, and just the difference in her attitude was phenomenal. And I learned that through my mother. She said, you have got to understand the total child so that you can make a difference in their educational experience.
Well, I can see and hear like mother, like daughter, and I know that's a cliched kind of phrase, but even as you talk about, it's almost how you learned service, giving back to community, understanding where where your talent is, and it wasn't about doing hair. It was really about recognizing the need to embrace the whole child and again understand circumstances and how the smallest thing can make a difference in somebody's life.
And I think the other thing is she didn't have to be upfront. She was such a strong woman, and if you talk to anybody, I don't think I've ever met anyone in my life who didn't love my mother. And she didn't have to be the loudest one. She didn't have to be at the forefront, but the impact that she made was just phenomenal. And she was so strong, and the things that she accomplished early on as one of 12 children and going to college, and it was just an incredible, and I don't think I fully realized it until I became an adult. I thought I was just strong myself, and then I realized that I was my mother's child.
Absolutely, in the genes.
Yeah.
So you left Prince George's County and you went to the University of Virginia.
Yes.
How did you get there?
By accident. I wish I could say it was a plan. I had a very good friend who had gone before me, two friends actually, and they came home and said what a phenomenal school it was. My parents had said I was going to go to the University of Maryland. They probably still haven't forgiven me for that. But I went to visit the school and fell in love with it, particularly their Government and Foreign Affairs department, and said, Mom, Dad, this is where I would like to go. And they figured out how to make it work, so I'm indebted to them for that.
And then from undergraduate, law school was next.
Law school, and I stayed there. I had gotten into a number of schools, but I loved University of Virginia. I was very active there, so I decided that I would stay there and do my law school experience as well. Only thing that I didn't do, and I regret, they had told me that I should do the joint JD MBA, and I had already stayed 3 years longer from my classmates, and the thought of 4 years kind of made me unhappy, so I said, no, I'll just do the 3. I really wish I had stayed and done the joint program.
Because remember, you had already been prepared for those economics
classes.
That's right. Because you were here at Prince George's.
That's right.
So we all know that student involvement can be a really contributing factor to student success. And I think about what you've talked about relative to your childhood, elementary, middle, high school, being an aide in your mom's classroom and probably having an impact on other students. But in terms of extracurricular, community service, involvement, advocacy, student activism in college, what was that like for you?
I think it started very early. I think it was just in my DNA because I had 2 parents who were very involved in community and very involved in their schools. I can still remember when Winfield Kelly was county executive, so I'm kind of dating myself, but I was a county page. And normally they only let you be a county page once. They allowed me to be a county page twice. I was a Girl Scout, and we were very active in the community. I was doing voter education even as a little person. So I was extremely involved even from a young age. In high school, I worked for Gladys Noon Spellman. That was really one of my first political. I was on the Student Government Association. So it was just something that I enjoyed doing. And it felt good, and I felt like I was making an impact.
Well, we're going to take a short break, but when we return, we're going to talk about leadership development in Prince George's County. Stay with us.
Body language can tell you all sorts of things. Like someone is having a stroke. Know the sudden signs. Learn fast. Face drooping, arm weakness, speech difficulty. Time to call 911 and get them to a hospital immediately. Learn the body language and spot a stroke fast.
Getting closer to nature can get you closer to your family. Go to discovertheforest.org.
Welcome back to Conversations. I'm here with Marva Jo Camp talking about leadership and community service in Prince George's County. So Marva Jo, let's talk about this. Throughout your career, you've held senior positions in law, government, higher education, and community organizations. So let's talk first about what's been your greatest career achievement from your perspective, and how did you develop the leadership skills that you thought were really critical to that success?
I think shortly after I graduated from law school, I worked in some law firms, but then I had the opportunity to work for Perrin Mitchell, and he was a workaholic. And he was someone who was very committed to community and to empowerment. And so I also had the chance to work for a fellow that some people may know, Charles Ogletree, who was at the Public Defender Service. So after I graduated, I had an opportunity to volunteer, because one thing my parents always said is make sure you volunteer. And so I volunteered at the Congressional Black Caucus, and that turned into a full-time job. That working for a member, Congressman Mervyn Dimely, that then led to me working on the subcommittee on Africa, which he chaired. I say all of that because one of the opportunities I had was to work in South Africa shortly after Mr. Mandela got out of prison, and to work on the legislation to give dollars from the United States to the South African Fund. And I had the chance to sit next to Mr. Mandela to talk about this money that we were given to him. And I know I'm belaboring it, but I just have to share this. So we were at a meeting, and Mr. Mandela and my boss were sitting at the head of the table. Mm-hmm. Staff was sitting on the side, and my boss kept saying, and I'm, no. And he said, come up here. And so he got up and made me sit next to Mr. Mandela. And I was so nervous. And so he was talking, and he said, I know I'm talking, but I always know when there's a beautiful woman next to me. And I thought, oh my gosh, what a humble and what a just gentle spirit. And so having a chance to be a part of the history that was being made at that time, I will never forget.
And then, so from the perspective of your experiences, how did you get to a point where it was so important for you to think about leadership development in our own county? As we think about 1 million residents, we think about not just being Prince George's County, but quite frankly, being part of a larger sort of macro world, the Washington, D.C. region. And then so leadership, as we think about not just young people, but quite frankly, seasoned adults, why did that become important to you?
Well, I think it's bigger for me. It's even bigger than leadership. To me, it's about community trusteeship and the responsibilities that we have as community trustees and taking the lead on being engaged in our community, being knowledgeable about what happens in our community, making an impact on our communities, and as my parents used to tell me, leaving a place better than you found it. And so if you're going to really take that serious, then you have to step up and take on those kind of leadership roles. You have to be prepared. You can't just say, I want it to be. You have to have the information. You have to know how you're going to strategize. You have to know what the implications. You have to know how you balance competing interests. And so all of those are characteristics of leaders, but what it really is you're saying, I'm making a commitment to be a community trustee, and I'm willing to be on the forefront of that effort.
And so talk then about Leadership Prince George's. Your involvement has been long, it's been storied, and it's been stellar. So
Thank you.
Why Leadership Prince George's, and why really take on the mission and vision of that organization?
I graduated from Leadership Prince George's in 1997, and I never forget that time because I was pregnant the entire time with my daughter and had her a week before or a week after I graduated. And when I was in the program, I appreciated the opportunity to meet people that I probably would have never met but for being in the program. And so what made me years later decide to get involved in it is that you went through the program, which was great, but then there was nothing else after it. So once you graduated back then, you just graduated. And you might see people, but there was not this kind of sustained effort to do some other things, to take what you had learned and do it in a way where all of us came back together. And so when Dr. Welch approached me about, Marva, would you get involved in it and see if we maybe be able to move it out and really create a larger program? I said, of course, because I appreciated all that he had done as the founder of the organization, and because I thought a couple of things. One is that I have long believed that the county had some issues, and I'm probably saying something that is controversial. I think as we become politically mature, sometimes we're not always as civil as I think we should be. And I have always taken the position that if you break bread with people, get to know them as people, that it is hard to be mean to one another. And I saw Leadership Prince George's as a vehicle to make sure that people could start to see each other as people and not as, well, you're on this side of the political spectrum or on this side of the political spectrum. The other is that I saw this as taking these different groups of people who had so much talent and skills and saying, let's come together and see what we can do together that maybe we couldn't do in our individual little sectors of or little fiefdoms inside Prince George's County.
Well, I certainly remember being a graduate of Leadership Prince George's myself when I was recruited for the program, and I kept thinking to myself, number one, what could I offer? I'm well beyond sometimes any steps that you might think one would take as you think about your career trajectory or your professional life and say, you know, I'm sure they're not looking for a stodgy person like me. They're looking for something very different. But I would agree with you that the opportunity for developing those kinds of long-term relationships, and it's not always about sort of one hand feeding the other. It really is about sitting at a table, breaking bread together, and being able to talk about common concerns and common solutions to what we see as problems that may have plagued or continue to plague our community, and the role that we can play in that as people who live, work, and play here every day.
And be creative sometimes. Things that may not be on my mind as a lawyer may be on yours as an educator, or someone else's as a arts person, or someone else's as a public safety person. So just having those different perspectives come into one place. And you said stodgy, but I just have to say you were one of our best graduates. So we are glad that you decided to go through.
Well, talk to us about the structure of the program.
It is a 10-month program. So we have, there's a selection process. We go through a vetting process, And once they're selected, we have an opening retreat, which is a 3-day retreat, as well as a closing retreat. And then we have programs in between on issues such as economic development, public safety, education. We've come here to the community college on a number of occasions. And so really there's also the component that we added, which I love, and that's a community service component. So each class is required to do a community service project, and in a way to honor them, once they finished it, Leadership Prince George's then tries to do something that allows us to continue whatever that project is. So I'll give you an example. We have now started an Emerging Leaders program for 11th and 12th graders.
And what we'll do is when we come back, we're going to talk about that Emerging Leaders program. Okay. So we'll take another short break, and when we return, we'll talk about the role of community service and developing young leaders in our county. Stay with us.
Clean kitchen surfaces, utensils, and hands with soapy water. 1 in 6 Americans will get sick from food poisoning this year. Keep your family safer. Check your steps at foodsafety.gov.
Welcome back. Let's continue our conversation about leadership development and community service in Prince George's County. Marva Jo, we were talking about the Emerging Leaders program for young people. Talk to us about that and why it was important to incorporate that as a segment of Leadership Prince George's.
Well, we started maybe about 3 or 4 years ago doing individual programs for young people, elementary school, I keep saying middle school, and a little bit high school. And I really wanted to have a more structured program where we gave our young people the same opportunity that we were giving our adult leaders to experience and understand the county, understand the importance of community service, having sort of the tools and the knowledge to develop themselves, and to help them know how important it is to network. And as I tell them all the time, that you only get one shot to make a first impression. And so we spend a lot of time talking about eye contact. We spend a lot of time talking about a firm handshake. We spend a lot of time talking to them about having energy and to take advantage of the access that we're giving them to leaders all around the region, particularly Prince George's County, and to understand how valuable that is as they move along their career, and that these are people that they can come back to once they go to college and are looking for jobs. Because the best jobs I've gotten because I volunteered somewhere, people have liked what I've done, and then they've said, we want you once you come back.
So 2 questions, the age requirements, and then how do young people and their parents or family members find out about this program?
We do 11th and 12th graders. And we try to send it out to all of the schools, public and private, through park and planning. We put it on the website. It's word of mouth. We just try to get it just blanket anywhere that we can get the information to the young people. Some people say, well, what is the criteria? My criteria is that the child wants to do it. Because there have been students who were, in my opinion, at risk. This doesn't have to be the top students. This doesn't have to be the A students. This has to be the student that is willing to participate. And you know, my parents also often told me, said, I can teach skills, but I can't teach character. So I'm looking for kids with character and a willingness to learn. And I'll tell you a brief story. We had the second class. This is the second class that we've had. And one of the mothers just put her son in it, because her daughter was in it last year, and she got up and did a testimonial not asked for to say what a difference this had made in her daughter's life and how she was excelling in college. And she attributed it almost entirely to Leadership Prince George's, the emerging leaders. I'm telling you, I had to go and take a little tear and then come back.
So if people are interested, they can go to the Leadership Prince George's website and click on the Emerging Leaders tab and find out all about it.
All about it, and we have a number, and they can call the number, and we'd be happy to talk to them as much as they want, because we're very excited about the program.
Well, let's talk a little bit about not just why you think community service is important, but you know, everybody doesn't either see themselves in a leadership role or want to be in a leadership role. So how can people give back anyways?
I think it's just being engaged. You know, you don't always have to be at the forefront of a opportunity. Everybody has different skills, everybody has talents. It's figuring out what yours is, figuring out what you have a passion about, and getting involved in it. You know, I'm not good at technology. Well, that would not be an area, but you know what, you're a leader in technology, even if you don't view yourself as that, because if you make whatever we're trying to do successful, then you're a leader in your own right, and helping to understand that it's not always a person standing at the stage. That's why anytime I speak, I always have the whole group up behind me, because I want people to understand that all that we do it collectively, and no man, woman are islands unto themselves.
Well, the other thing I think it's important to understand is there are so many ways that we can give back in Prince George's County.
So much need.
Oh, there's so much need. If it's mentoring, if it's tutoring, if it's supporting the homeless, if it's helping in schools in ways that are structured, if it's just thinking about how you build communities.
That's right. And we are doing, for example, we always do Christmas in April. And it's something that the adults do, both in the graduates and the class. But this year we're going to have the young people, and they're actually going to participate in Christmas in April, but they're also going to be doing a block party. So if we go into the house, there are all these other people in the community that might want to participate in this exercise. So they're putting together a block party for everybody in the neighborhood where we'll be visiting. So I'm excited. It's first year we're doing that.
So we have the third class of emerging leaders coming up, and we know how people can find out information about that. And I know that we're going to be celebrating
30 years.
30 years of Leadership Prince George's. In a few seconds, just tell me how excited you are about that.
I am very, very excited, but I want to switch and say something real quick, because we talk about people giving back, and I want to say I've been chair of Leadership Prince George's, I think, going on 6 years. We are a working board. We have no staff. We have no paid staff, and most of the people on this board have served at least 5 years, and they give of their time and their talents, and I think it just speaks to the passion and the love that so many people in Prince George's County have for this community, and so we need to celebrate that.
Well, what I will say to you is thank you so much, Marva Jo Camp, for being my guest on the program today. For more information on Leadership Prince George's or the Emerging Leaders Program, please visit www.leadershipprincegeorges.com. And for more information on community service opportunities in Prince George's County, visit the websites on your screen. I'm Charlene Dukes. Thanks for watching this edition of Conversations.